The ACT essay is optional. You let the test administrators know that you want to do the essay when you register for the exam. I always recommend that you do the essay, and if you're watching this video, you probably are, and I recommend that for several reasons. Number one, it makes you more competitive. Let's say you and another student get the same score on the multiple choice part, but you do better on the essay, which is a separate score. You look better. Number two, it's a controlled variable. You don't always know what's coming on the multiple choice part, but you do know what's coming on the essay if you prepare for it, and it's just easier to give a controlled response in writing. And number three, the foundations of all Western education are reading and writing. No matter how STEM your intended major or career is, if you study it at university, you're gonna have to write a lot, so it's good to demonstrate now that you can write. And finally, choosing to do something that you don't necessarily have to do shows that you are willing to go above and beyond. Let's talk about the prompt for this essay. At the top of the prompt, you see a paragraph of background information about a controversial topic, the death penalty, gun control, etc. Under that introduction, you see three boxes that the exam calls perspectives, and these are basically sides to the issue. There's usually one pro, one con, and one neutral. Underneath all that, you finally get the actual instructions, which you may not really need to read because they're always the same, and they basically ask you your position on the topic, which, long story short, means this is essentially an evolved form of the classic traditional argumentative essay, which used to be the most common type of essay prompt on virtually any standardized exam, except in the past, you were given a lot less information. You may have been given only one or two sentences or just a quote from a famous person and then asked your position. What do you think about the death penalty? What do you think about gun control? And expected to write an argumentative essay from there using your knowledge. But now, because there's so much information in the prompt, which is now an entire page, I think the exam writers have decided that because the quality of American primary and secondary education has declined so considerably, they assume that you're now so stupid and uneducated that you have no idea what's going on. So this is basically their way of babysitting you and holding your hand through the argumentative essay writing process. If you are an intelligent and educated person, then you do read, watch, and listen to the news. So you do know what's going on, and you may not even need to read that paragraph of background information because you're already familiar with the topic. However, just as the prompt for this essay has evolved, I think so can the writing. So even though you are asked your position as though it is a classic traditional argumentative essay, I recommend a different approach. I think this essay can be an exercise in critical or logical reasoning. If you're not familiar with what's called critical reasoning on GMAT or GRE and logical reasoning on LSAT, I have both a post and a video about that. So try to review those in order to understand more fully how to do this essay. I include that information in the description. But basically, critical or logical reasoning is a process in which you try to identify flaws or weaknesses in an argument. Other words for argument include conclusion, position, or opinion. And you have three arguments in the prompt, and those are the three perspectives. So you want to apply the critical or logical reasoning strategy to each perspective, whereby you identify assumptions. Assumptions, again, are what the author, the person with the opinion, did not mention, did not take into account, overlooked, essentially what's missing, what's wrong with the argument. Brainstorm assumptions for each perspective, choose one assumption for each of the three perspectives, and there you have your three body paragraphs. If you're not familiar with basic writing concepts, like for example, hook, indirect or direct thesis statement, transition, specific examples, you might want to review those just to have a better understanding of how to do this essay. I include that information in the description as well. Even though we are taking a different approach, you still have to use some traditional essay writing techniques. Your outline for this essay will be the classic 5-paragraph structure of introduction and conclusion with 3 body paragraphs sandwiched in between. In the introduction, go ahead and give a hook. A hook is something interesting and creative, just food for thought about the theme of the essay, and the theme in this case, of course, is the topic. A hook does not take a position, it just makes the reader want to keep reading. After the hook, you can give what's called connecting information, which lets the reader know there is some kind of debate going on here, something on which people disagree. And the connecting information also does not take a position. The final sentence of the introduction is always the thesis statement, and the thesis statement is always 2 things, main idea plus supporting points. The main idea for this essay is always the same. It's that all 3 perspectives are invalid, and the supporting points are the assumptions that you brainstormed for those perspectives. If you want to give a direct thesis statement, and I prefer that you do, you can summarize in the thesis statement the 3 assumptions that you will elaborate in the body paragraphs. In the body paragraphs, you can give a topic sentence. A topic sentence, like the thesis statement, is always 2 things. It's always main idea plus a supporting point for that paragraph. So the main idea here is that this perspective is invalid, and the supporting point is the assumption, why it's invalid. After the topic sentence, you just kind of want to argue it out. Explain that the perspective is invalid. There are basically 2 ways to argue. You can ask questions. Questioning is a way to weaken an opponent's argument. In fact, in psychotherapy, there's one modality in which the therapist never asks the client any questions, because questioning can make people feel in a subordinate position. So ask questions. In particular, you can ask hypothetical questions. What if, what about, how about? And as always, in essay writing, give specific examples. Specific examples are narratives, little stories that illustrate the point you're trying to make. And specific examples here can be real, hypothetical, or parallel. A parallel example would apply the topic to a different topic. For example, if you're writing about sports, you could give an example from business. In each body paragraph, I'd like you to ask at least 1 question and give at least 1 specific example. In the conclusion, as always, the first thing you do is you restate the thesis statement, and you can do that in 2 sentences if you want to. A lot of people do that. And because the instructions asked you for your position on the topic, here is where you can give it, and you don't have to agree with any of the perspectives. You can give your own unique position. If you agree with one of the perspectives, you want to give a qualified agreement because you've already argued with that perspective. And because I would like each paragraph to be at least 3 sentences, if you want to add more to your conclusion, you can give another hook. So that's an introduction to the ACT essay. To read more in detail, including an example prompt and example essay, please visit my website. I include that information in the description as well. The essay that I wrote is about 10 times longer than anything that you will have time to write on the exam, but I just want to show you everything that you can do. And for a private lesson with me, please also visit my website. That information too is in the description. I've worked online with people from all over the world, and I'd love to work with you. Take care.